my eyes, sir. I've never used them before.
I do what I do because of my dad. He gave his life for the pursuit of knowledge. Because up there is where our stories can be told.
I wanted to say a few things about this upcoming film starring Brad Pitt and directed by James Gray called Ad Astra. The film's title, Ad Astra, is a Latin phrase meaning to the stars, and the film uses the catchphrase, the answers we seek are just outside our reach. This offers you a sort of subliminal peek as to the direction this film will take. Ad Astra has always been a beloved phrase for me. The word Astra in Latin does mean star, but a better translation of the term Ad Astra is to the heavens, which is really only half of several Latin phrases for which Ad Astra is used. The purpose for the phrase is kind of stripped away using it in this truncated way. The full phrase, per aspera et astra, is so meaningful to me that I've had it brandished into my flesh as sort of a lifelong, humble reminder. A tattoo I got long before I became a believer, so everyone just settle down. I added the words mia maxima culpa at the end, my personal truth. Per aspera ad astra, mia maxima culpa, or hard way to the heavens by my own great fault. The meaning of the phrase can take different interpretations, but it speaks to the idea of extending one's reach, of achieving great things through hardship, through struggle. In other words, the sky is the limit. Anything can be accomplished in spite of diversity, with endurance and humility. But for futurist transhumanists who are using the phrase, and there are so many, I'm seeing this phrase everywhere, they seem to remove the heart from this great phrase. For them it's only to the literal stars. It seems their mission in life is to build a stairway to heaven, a Tower of Babel, to reach the stars or the heavens in their own strength, using instruments crafted by their own hand. And they will find themselves in the outer reaches of the void, the ruin, the hostile landscape of endless, lifeless space, as if they are looking for love in all the wrong places. The film is about a seasoned astronaut who accepts a mission into space to go after his father, a renegade elder astronaut who has lost his mind and gone to a dark sociopathic place. He wants to do something disastrous, a threat to the solar system and all of humanity, using a highly classified antimatter reactor of some sort. A subject, incidentally, that was discussed at a very real conference by this man's foundation a few years ago. From the press release, the conference brought together some of the best scientific minds in the country and focused on the need to identify the greatest threats to the Earth today. Such threats included acts of bioterrorism, nuclear calamities and/or nuclear warfare, overpopulation, asteroid and meteor threats, supervolcanoes, mass tectonic earthquakes, rogue self-replicating nanomachines, superintelligent computers, and high-energy chain reactions that could disrupt the fabric of space itself. That's quite a list of topics that were discussed. There is so much going on with this film, even though the plotline is paper thin. It's the heavy-handed message behind the message that's being delivered here, so let's take a look. For a start, Roy, Brad Pitt's character, is an unconventional hero of sorts. He is scripted to have a schizoid personality. Gray offered this in his Vanity Fair interview. It's really more of an attempt by us to examine a schizoid personality and how that is preferred for astronauts in space travel, because you don't have to connect emotionally, he said. Ultimately, Pitt plays someone with schizoid tendencies, though Gray said that this is not an outright character trait, but more of the deep background baked into the part. Schizoid is a personality disorder, according to the DSM-5, that's characterized by a lack of interest in social or family relationships, indifference to social norms and expectations, a tendency toward a solitary or sheltered lifestyle, secretiveness, emotional coldness, detachment, and apathy. Affected individuals may be unable to form intimate attachments to others and simultaneously possess a rich and elaborate, but exclusively internal fantasy world. James Gray is making this affliction sound romantic and practical. Being detached and emotionless is being encouraged and even engineered. The futurists of the world seem to aggrandize the schizoid, markedly detached segment of the population as perfect candidates for their future utopia, for the collective, and the virtual lifestyle they are promoting and striving to build. The effects of a generation of people consumed and mesmerized by the pocket-sized mechanical brain that is their cell phone is that it has replaced real human interaction. The more one interacts with their phone, well, the endless, manipulative, illusory data that the screens gratuitously offer, the more real human connection fades into oblivion. The desire for human interaction will leave you and even become intolerable. They're engineering a generation of schizoid personalities, devoid of empathy and the need for normal human contact. They want humans isolated, staring blankly and blithely into the screens, perpetually connected to the machine. Automatons. They are engineering a population of detached, soulless automatons. Let me insert something here about space travel. As a believer, I lean heavily toward gap theory, or ruin and reconstruction theory of the creation account in Genesis. In Genesis 1:1, God's initial creation is perfect and good. Everything God made was perfect and pure, and sin or corruption had not yet entered in. In verse 2, however, a devastating catastrophe occurs that throws the universe into a state of chaos and ruin through a judgment of God. With gap theory, in Genesis 1:2, the void and formless state of the earth, and ultimately the ruin of the universe, is the direct result of sin and corruption entering in. Something happened between verse 1 and verse 2 that caused the earth and all of outer space to become desolate, dark, and uninhabitable. It is thought that the distance between verse 1 and verse 2 could have lasted countless billions of years. Of course, it's gap theory that reconciles modern science to the Bible, and there are many scriptures that lend to this theory, making an extremely strong case. The event that took place, of course, was Lucifer's rebellion and subsequent fall. After sin and rebellion enters God's perfect creation, of course, the judgment comes, the Luciferic flood, as it were. All of space becomes a void, a vast landscape of ruin, of lifeless, hostile territory, and the earth became formless and void. The Hebrew verb haya denotes a past tense, or had become formless and void, which can be seen in many verses. The word appears 27 times in Genesis alone, all meaning past tense, or had become. Genesis 1:2 describes the earth as desolate and uninhabitable. So why would God create something in a chaotic condition? The truth is, he wouldn't. He may have allowed for chaos to unfold, permitting it to take place. It was God's judgment that rendered the earth formless and void, desolate and uninhabitable, as a result of corruption entering into the equation. In Genesis 1:2, the Hebrew word for the deep is tehom, which means abyss, and darkness was upon it. Have you ever wondered where the abyss that houses the fallen angels bound in proverbial chains is located? This is it. The deep, or tehom, or Tartarus in the Greek, this is the abyss, or as it's described in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4,
"For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment."
Or what about the place of everlasting chains as spoken of in Jude chapter 6?
"And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness, unto the judgment of the great day."
They are condemned to exist in this disembodied state, in this place, this dark, endless ruin, bound in chains until judgment day. This is not their final destination, however. They will end in the lake of fire. But for now they are bound in darkness, in the abyss, in the ruinous vacuum of space. God never says darkness is good. He tells us that light is good. As in John chapter 1, verse 5, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." In John chapter 12, verse 46, "I have come into the world as a light, so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness." Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked. I did a video on this very topic, which I've linked below. It's titled, "Lucifer and the Fall of the Universe Before the Creation of the Earth." You'll find a link in the description box below. The point is, God chose this place, Earth, to rebuild. Space is very, very old, but the restored Earth is young. And space remains a hostile, uninhabitable, limitless wasteland of darkness and ruin. There is zero life there, except for the myriads of disembodied fallen angels cursed to reside there, bound in chains until Judgment Day. Only the Earth was rebuilt, redeemed, and re-inhabited. So those who are searching for E.T. or strive for some off-world existence, to take command of Tehom, take command of the Abyss, the Pit, or Tartarus, they are operating from rebellion, exercising an absolute futile effort, one designed by the first rebel, Satan himself. It's as if they desire to claim the Abyss as their dominion, their kingdom. How absurd is that? Think about this when they spend countless billions on rocket ships to the moon or colonizing Mars, for building castles in the sky, when entire nations of the poor are starving and dying, when cures for diseases sit unrealized, and we are bound to antiquated energy systems like fossil fuels, and only a fraction of that money could solve the world's problems, would feed the hungry and heal the sick for generations to come. They care nothing for humanity. Realize this truth today. It's their religion that dictates these ideas. It's really an anti-religion, and if you ask someone like James Gray, Elon Musk, or anyone from the big tech camp what they believe, they will tell you humanism, using one term or another. They are futurist transhumanists, Luciferians, which has its roots in atheistic humanism. But understand, in their mind, Lucifer is merely a model entity for their beliefs. I'm not convinced they actually believe in the actual person that is Lucifer. Some do and some don't. To believe in the devil means to also believe in God. And they have rejected God. Their movement, the self-proclaimed liberated, intellectual, enlightened ones, have rejected God long, long ago.
Also known as Lucian Graves, the co-founder and spokesperson for the Satanic Temple. Really great to have you on today. You know, I think a good place to start, just to focus on the confusion some of our audience may have. What is the difference, and of course there are two different groups, between the Satanic Temple and the Church of Satan, which is something I think not everybody is completely up to speed on?
Well, the Church of Satan was, of course, founded in the 60s by Anton LaVey, who became kind of this iconic character with his goatee and bald head, and he was the author of the Satanic Bible. And one way in which we're similar is that we're both atheistic religions, and that we don't view Satan as an actual conscious deity. He's a metaphorical construct for us, the eternal rebel against the ultimate tyrant for us.
Do you believe in God? Do you believe in Jesus Christ? No. Irrevocably not. I believe that the Godhead resides within oneself. I believe that man creates gods in accordance with his own needs. And if he doesn't, someone else will create them for him.
Who or what is Satan to you?
Satan is the essence of that which dwells within myself.
Would you explicate this?
Satan is the pioneer, the inventor, Prometheus. Satan has always been the scapegoat, the other, as Thomas Saz, the psychiatrist, calls it. He has always been the opposition to what has been established at the time, the counterbalance that creates change, that creates evolution, that sets the climate socially for modification.
In the mystery schools, they refer to this mystical time coming out of the age of innocence as the Luciferian philosophy. I've tried to illuminate you with this for years on my radio broadcast. In the Bible or in the church, they talk about the fall of man. Same thing. There's only one difference between the Luciferian philosophy and the fall of man, is that those who talk about the fall of man believe in God, whether or not they believe in a Savior, they believe in God. The ones who believe in the Luciferian philosophy do not. It's a metaphor. They don't believe that there ever was a God, or that there ever is a God, aside from man himself. And man has not reached that state yet, but can, this is what they teach in the lodges, that if you perfect yourself as the temple of the God within and become Christed, we've all heard this in the New Age movement, you too can become God. In her movie, running on the beach, spinning around, I am God. Adam and Eve were held prisoner in the Garden of Eden by an unjust, cruel, and vindictive God until Lucifer, through his agent Satan, set man free from this garden by giving him the gift of intellect. Through the use of intellect, man will conquer the earth, will conquer nature, and will himself become God. It's taught in every Masonic temple in this land. Every secret brotherhood, every secret society, every mystical temple, every occult organization teaches the Luciferian philosophy. They do not believe in Lucifer. They do not believe in any entity called a devil, and they do not believe in God. It is a mistake for you to assume that they do. They're atheists in the strictest sense of the word. They are humanists. That's their religion.
People don't necessarily understand or even accept the fact that we might be able to live forever. And for me, that's the main thing about transhumanism, which is different than other things. Can you describe that idea?
Sure. You know, so I just like to say transhumanism is an international social movement of people trying to use science and technology to radically modify or improve the human body and improve the human experience.
Like mobile phones?
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, some people will say transhumanism was the first time a primate picked up a rock and made an axe out of it, or a hammer. But you know, I like to think of transhumanism more in terms of the radical science that we're just encroaching upon in our lives and in civilization right now. But certainly an iPhone, I mean, if you look back in 5 years, how dramatic it's in some smartphones, what it's done to society, it's very transhumanist. The primary goal of transhumanism is to try to overcome biological death. And there's a number of methods to do that. You can do that through either, for example, 3D printing new organs, organ failure being one of the main reasons people die. You can change your genetic structure and try to make it so you can stop aging, or you can maybe even do, pretty science fiction-y things like upload yourself into a machine. There's a number of methods that transhumanists are approaching this problem of death. But they're all ways to try to essentially make it so that we don't have to die.
Herein lies the madness, the insanity. Their anti-religion offers its followers many empty promises. The part they don't tell you is the end goal is brains in vats connected to a central AI computer. It's brains in vats, literally. This is where they're headed. Much like the Matrix and the pods. Human biology continues to frustrate their plans. So brains in vats hooked up to a supercomputer that feeds you a perpetual manufactured reality and dictates your every thought forever and ever and ever. Space is hostile, uninhabitable. It is the dark abyss, the house of the fallen angels. It is a death sentence. In Kabbalah, it is the Klapotic realm, the wasteland. Even demons begged Jesus not to send them back there. Back to Ad Astra. The trailer starts off, I do what I do because of my dad. What's the underlying message in this film? A subliminal message that makes former generations into the renegades, the bad guys who want to destroy humanity and everything? This is the old mind, the old way, the way of the God of the Bible. The old way equates to annihilation in their minds, but the new way is a path to utopia. Just like Dad, but yet divergent, taking an entirely different path. Because Dad is bad, a type of liberation, a rebellion, but one that saves the utopian world. Because this is their anti-religion. It requires social engineering, using their high-production propaganda materials. Of course, Ad Astra showcases the space elevator. Every time I see the space elevator in a film, I feel like it's paying some kind of homage to Arthur C. Clarke, who loved the idea and included it in at least 2 of his novels, one being the 3rd installment in the Space Odyssey series titled 2061 Odyssey 3, as well as The Fountains of Paradise, a novel literally about the construction of the space elevator, published back in 1979, wherein Clarke calls the space elevator the orbital tower. The space elevator is not really science fiction anymore. They're working on it. From this article from NBC, NASA says the basic concept of a space elevator is sound. and researchers around the world are optimistic that one can be built. The Obayashi Corporation, a global construction firm based in Tokyo, has said it will build one by 2050, and China wants to build one as soon as 2045. Now, an experiment to be conducted soon aboard the International Space Station will help determine the real-world feasibility of a space elevator. The space elevator is the holy grail of space exploration, says Michio Kaku, a professor of physics at City College of New York and a noted futurist. Imagine pushing the up button of an elevator and taking a ride into the heavens. It could open up space to the average person. And there's that phrase again, to the heavens, or ad astra. And what will they do when they get there? Build their own castles in the sky? Live as gods? Gods of the abyss? A son follows his dad's footsteps, but the dad is bad. The one who's still human and therefore turned evil, and is going to destroy everything. And the good schizoid son will save this future utopia. Because he has gone to the heavens, he is godlike. He has traveled into and out of the abyss. He is the savior of the world. Even the demons beg Jesus not to send them back to space. That's because it is a grave.